Have you ever wondered what the perfect society would look like? In the 18th and 19th centuries, architects and thinkers dreamed of creating utopian ideals. Christianopolis, a utopian society by Johann Valentin André where money was no longer a factor, wealth was generated through the use of the philosopher's stone and science played a central role. Proudhon's idea of a perfect society was based on mutualism and cooperation, with a focus on spreading power as much as possible. And New Atlantis by Francis Bacon was considered the blueprint for future utopias that relied on science and technology. It was a well-organized patriarchy with equally distributed property to balance ownership and mitigate poverty. These were presumed perfect, harmonious communities where everyone lived in peace and prosperity. However, they were only ideas and stories of the times. As the very real Industrial Revolution took hold and brought with it a rapidly growing population of poor working-class individuals and families, the challenge of designing for this new reality became more pressing. How did architects respond to this need? How did they try to bring their utopian visions to life in the face of the harsh realities of the industrial age? Today we will discuss how architects tried to create a better world for the working class in the time of the Industrial Revolution. The 18th and 19th centuries were a time of great change as the Industrial Revolution swept across the world and transformed the way people lived and worked. This era saw architects and thinkers envision a better world, with utopian ideals of perfect communities. Yet the realities of the Industrial Revolution challenged these ideals and pushed them to their limits. The growing population of poor working-class individuals and families, who were often forced to live in squalor and poverty, presented a new challenge for architects, who were tasked with designing for this reality. It is worth mentioning what happened to the ideals expressed in some of the world's most important political documents. The American Constitution, written in 1787, enshrined the idea of liberty, equality, and justice for all, while the English Magna Carta, written in 1297, laid the foundation for individual rights and freedoms. Meanwhile, the French Revolution, which began in 1789, saw the rise of the motto Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, which was later written into the French Constitution in 1958. These documents reflected a deep-seated desire for a better world, where people were free to live their lives as they chose and where the government was responsible for ensuring that everyone was treated fairly and equally. However, in the face of the challenges posed by the Industrial Revolution, these ideals were often pushed to the brink, or even eradicated altogether. The rapid growth of manufacturing infrastructure and the resulting urbanization brought with it numerous problems, such as poverty, disease, and overcrowding, which created a new set of challenges that architects had to address. The Industrial Revolution was a turning point in human history, marking the transition from agrarian-based economies to industrialized ones. But what caused this massive shift? The answer lies in the profits and self-interests of a select group of individuals and businesses. Whether driven by neglect, greed, or simply a lack of understanding of the consequences, this focus on personal gain over the well-being of the general population had far-reaching and dramatic effects on the urban environment. Cities grew and changed at an unprecedented pace, and the people who lived in them were often left to deal with the negative consequences. The Industrial Revolution brought about many changes, including the rapid expansion of the rail network in England. This network made it easier to transport goods and bring in new workers to the cities, which were rapidly growing. But the rapid pace of expansion had put a strain on other systems, like housing infrastructure. Cities that once had populations in the tens of thousands saw those numbers soar to hundreds of thousands in just a few decades. To make matters worse, there weren't any existing regulations in place to prevent factories from being built in residential areas, which led to a chaotic and often dangerous living environment for those in the city centers. The Industrial Revolution brought about many changes, including a massive shift in population from rural areas to urban centers. This led to overcrowding, inadequate housing, and poor living conditions for the workers who were flocking to the cities in search of jobs. The cities were simply not equipped to handle the influx of people, and as a result, sickness and mortality rates skyrocketed. The lack of affordable and adequate housing, combined with low wages and long working hours, made the situation even worse for the working class. The rapid migration to the cities for work put a strain on the existing infrastructure, and the workers were left to suffer in cramped and unsanitary living conditions. As the population of Birmingham grew rapidly during the Industrial Revolution, the need for affordable housing skyrocketed. The back-to-back houses offered a practical and economical solution for the urban working class. These units were attached to one another on three sides and were stacked 2 or 3 stories in height, separated from each other by narrow alleyways or courtyards. there were two types of back-to-back units. Multiple units, designed to house one individual or one small family per floor, and single units, designed to house one large family. The multiple units were accessed through a common and narrow wooden staircase in the hallway and consisted of one unpartitioned room where eating, living, and sleeping areas overlapped. The single units offered more privacy and space, with the floors separating their eating, living, and sleeping areas. The layout of the back-to-back houses was unique in that they offered a communal living experience. The ground floors were considered an early form of a center living space, with the entire floor being one big room where all family activities took place while the upstairs was used for sleeping. These units also shared communal facilities like courtyards. These courts provided a safe outdoor area for children to play and a sense of community and security among neighbors. Each unit in the back-to-back houses had a cellar and a ground floor with 1 or 2 stories above, and all units shared a common brick wall with its neighbors on 3 sides. The door and window openings for light and air were only on the front side of each unit, facing either the street or the courtyard. This made natural daylight, air ventilation, and circulation barely sufficient. Birmingham's back-to-back houses were known for their economical and efficient design, with each unit attached to its neighbors on 3 sides except for the end units. Constructed with brick masonry, a readily accessible and inexpensive building material, these houses were built quickly and easily. The brick walls served as both interior and exterior walls, resulting in a simple and functional living space. Despite the limited privacy and cramped living quarters, residents often tried to make their homes more personal by adding decorative touches such as painting or wallpapering the walls. During the late 1700s and mid-1800s, these units were the most economical and practical solution to housing the urban working class. However, as the population of Birmingham grew, the building conditions deteriorated rapidly, and entire neighborhoods became slum dwellings. The communal facilities were overwhelmed, and the water sources became breeding grounds for diseases such as tuberculosis, cholera, typhoid, smallpox, and measles. The overcrowded living quarters and the stresses they caused devastated the health of Birmingham, and ultimately led to the demise of this housing type. The Birmingham back-to-back houses are a historically significant part of England's architectural and social history. These units offered a practical and economical solution to housing the urban working class during the Industrial Revolution. But they also showed the consequences of overcrowding and the need for proper sanitation and living conditions, as well as the implementation of mandates from authorities to operate successfully. During the late 19th century, New York City saw a huge increase in its population due to a flood of European immigrants seeking better opportunities and a better life. To meet the growing demand for housing, a new type of building emerged in Lower Manhattan, called the New York tenement. Designed to provide affordable housing for the city's working poor, including the many immigrant workers and their families, these buildings were constructed at a rapid pace to keep up with the demand. By the early 20th century, the number of tenement buildings in the city had skyrocketed to over 80,000, up from around 15,000 in the mid-1800s. The New York tenement served as a crucial economic solution for the city's urban working class, offering them affordable and accessible housing options. Although the architects responsible for these buildings often went unacknowledged and unrecorded, they played a vital role in providing shelter for some of the city's most vulnerable residents. The tenements in New York City were built attached to neighboring structures and had a lot size of around 25 feet in width and 100 feet in depth. Each floor housed 4 apartments, complete with a central staircase and shared sanitation facilities. Initially, half of the lot size was dedicated to a courtyard situated at the back of the building. The tenements were 5 to 6 stories high, with a basement, ground floor with 1 or 2 businesses, residential floors, a common staircase and a yard. Every floor in the building had 4 living units, including a living room, kitchen, and 1 to 2 bedrooms. The units on the ground or lower level were usually noisier, but had the advantage of fewer steps to climb. In the early tenements, the toilets were situated outside and shared by residents, but later on, they were moved indoors, with windows for ventilation and light. This change made the tenements more suitable for people to live in. New York tenement buildings often featured 1 or 2 retail shops on the ground floor that provided both the tenants and the surrounding area with services. These shops were a distinctive aspect of the neighborhood and contributed to its overall appearance. The staircase was a critical component of the tenement design and operation. The staircases were narrow and connected all the residential floors to the main entrance on the ground floor. Typically made of wood, these staircases were not only a mode of vertical circulation but also played a significant role in the building's social dynamics. They served as a gathering place where residents frequently encountered each other and exchanged greetings. This social hub helped foster a sense of community among the tenants. When it comes to the typical unit floor plan type for New York tenement buildings, it's interesting to note that before 1850, the central living space was considered to be the main room. This room was where all activities took place, and the bedrooms were accessed through it. With the population of the city growing rapidly, these buildings were put up in quick succession to meet the demand for affordable housing. Each unit was fitted with 1 or 2 fireplaces, either fueled by wood or coal, serving as both a cooking and heating source. The walls were made of single-layer brick and were designed to hold the weight of the building while also touching the neighboring structures. The wooden joists, which were used to span the width of the building, were approximately 12 to 16 inches in thickness and rested on a sturdy 2-foot-thick stone foundation. Despite the pressing need for more housing, the buildings were often built quickly and with substandard materials, leading to a less than optimal structure. During the Industrial Revolution, New York tenement buildings in Lower Manhattan played a pivotal role in the city's growth and development. They provided a solution to the increasing demand for urban housing, with some even having a resident housekeeper to maintain the building. However, many landlords were more concerned with profits than the well-being of their tenants, leading to overcrowding, poor living conditions, and frequent outbreaks of illnesses such as yellow fever, smallpox, tuberculosis, and cholera. To address these issues, a centralized department was established in the 1860s and new regulations were introduced, aimed at improving the design, health, and safety of tenement buildings. The Royal Pavilion in Brighton is a stunning example of 19th-century neoclassical architecture designed by John Nash. The building, commissioned in 1815, was a private escape for King George IV to indulge in gambling, music, and women. It boasts a unique blend of Indian, Mughal, European, and Chinese architecture and an impressive exterior with domes, minarets, and cast-iron frames. The interior includes the long gallery, banqueting room with copper elements, great kitchen with modern technology, and the music room with a domed ceiling covered in 26,000 gold-coated cockle shells. The palace features Chinese features such as silk tassels and bamboo motifs, adding to its grandeur. The Royal Pavilion had a major impact on Brighton's growth and is now the center of the cultural quarter and a symbol of the city's spirit of fun and innovation. The neoclassical architecture of the 18th and 19th centuries were marked by its grandiosity, with large and imposing structures that often had a ceremonial feel. However, the rise of modernist issues of the time created a need for more cost-effective and practical methods of construction. The focus of these solutions seen in the Birmingham back-to-back houses and the New York tenements was based on functionality and simplicity, with a focus on efficiency and the use of new and adequate materials and technologies. The intricate details and embellishments seen in neoclassical structures, such as sculptures and reliefs, were replaced with a simpler, more streamlined aesthetic. What we can learn as designers today is to prioritize the space within our designs, and understand we are designing for people, their needs, and their circumstances, not simply for the sake of designing elaborate and grandeur spaces seen in neoclassicism. It could be argued that those in small family tenements and back-to-backs had a more fulfilling relationship with their home than a king in his hollow castle. As said by architect Yoshio Taniguchi, architecture is basically a container of something. I hope they will enjoy not so much the teacup, but the tea.